What funny story can you tell from your life?
The first story.
My friends love hearing about my dad because he's honestly one of the coolest guys I know. But he's also so stupid sometimes. Here's a recent classic. So, my parents are snowbirds, winters in Florida, summers in New Jersey. My mom usually flies back and forth, but my dad? Oh no. He drives up with their two dogs, a lab and a boxer, because he refuses to fork out the cash for them to fly. My mom is constantly on him about keeping the dogs on their leashes when he's walking them, especially when they're in unfamiliar places, because they get overly excited and take off running to explore. But my dad? He gives her that classic, yeah, yeah, I got it, and then proceeds to do whatever the hell he wants anyway. Why? Because he's a man, and apparently she should just expect that. Now, while he's getting ready for a recent road trip from Florida to Jersey, my mom, for the millionth time, reminds him, don't take the dogs off the leashes at rest stops, okay? Especially the lab. She's been a nightmare lately, running off and not listening. Dad gets all defensive and yells, why do you always act like I'm stupid? Like I don't know how to take care of my dogs? After a bit more arguing, he finally storms off, and we all think, okay, maybe this time he'll listen. Cut to later that night. We get a call from him, updating us on his drive. Here's what went down, because of course my dad thinks he knows better than my mom. Dad stops at a rest stop. It's been raining, so the grass is all muddy and gross. But does he leash the dogs? Nah. He lets them out, probably muttering something like, oh, I know my girls will be good. They'll listen to Daddy and won't go in the mud. Spoiler, they don't listen. Dad turns his back to light a cigarette and sip his coffee. When he turns around, he sees the boxer behind him, sniffing the grass. The lab? Nowhere to be seen. Dad starts calling for the lab, no response. He begins to get worried. She's a gorgeous yellow lab, and he's convinced someone's going to snatch her. Dad turns a corner, and there she is, on her back in a huge mud puddle, wiggling around like a happy little maniac, wagging her tail like it's no big deal. The lab is covered in mud. Dad tries to get her out. The lab thinks it's all a game, so she takes off running. My dad? He falls face first into the puddle. Then the boxer jumps on him, thinking the lab is attacking him. Now everybody's covered in mud. Dad drags them back to the car. Finally, with both dogs' collars in hand, he realizes he's got a problem. He's going to ruin the interior of his precious Mercedes. It's the only car he'll ever drive, according to him. But there's no choice. Dogs and Dad pile into the car, and the dogs immediately flop all over the back seat, leaving a trail of mud behind. Dad gets to the hotel. They're side-eyeing him at check-in because he looks like he just rolled out of a swamp. He explains the situation, the clerk laughs, and hands him the key. You'd think this would be the end, right? Nope. Dad decides to bathe the lab first, but of course the lab hates baths. She howls the whole time, making it sound like a crime scene. Enter the boxer. She thinks my dad is hurting the lab and runs into the bathroom, biting him on the ass. Hard. Don't worry, no blood. She knew just how far to go. Total chaos. Now my dad is yelling at both dogs who are barking and running around the room like it's the end of the world. My dad, with his two fake hips, is running around the room trying to get one of them into the bathroom and shut the door so he can clean up. Meanwhile, the room is now a disaster. Mud everywhere. Lab finally in the bathroom. Dad gets her in there, but she's still howling from the bath. Now the boxer's howling in the bedroom because she thinks my dad abandoned her. Phone rings. It's the hotel management. Is everything okay? A few neighbors have complained about a lot of noise.
The second story. This one probably isn't my funniest, but it's definitely my most recent. I was sitting at a cafe, casually reading a book of poetry that someone had gifted me. I was lost in the words when the man sitting next to me suddenly asked what I thought of it. Now, I'm no literary critic, but I do enjoy poetry and I've tried my hand at writing it myself. So I gave him my honest opinion. Some of the poems were amazing, but a lot of them felt like filler. Kind of like how most albums have a few great songs and a bunch of tracks you skip over. I even joked that I wish the literary world operated more like iTunes, where I could just buy individual stories for 99 cents instead of shelling out $15 for a book where most of it didn't appeal to me. He thanked me for my thoughts, and I figured, okay, he's not going to be buying this book. I went back to reading, and it wasn't until after he left that I closed the book and saw his picture on the back. Yeah, it was his book. Whoops. TLDR. I unintentionally told a poet to quit writing fluff in his own book. The third story?
My most popular story is about how I broke my toe while making love. That was a couple months ago, but first a little backstory. I'm not ticklish at all, except for this one spot on my stomach where there's a cluster of nerves or something that, when touched, scares the shit out of me, and I usually push back with my foot. Anyway, while having sex on the couch at my house, she involuntarily grabbed my stomach right in the sensitive spot. My foot straightens right into this pillar on the side of the closet, and I hit the edge with my pinky with a nasty crack. I was young and she was hot, so I didn't pay much attention to it until 30 seconds afterward, when I looked at my foot and saw that my toe was bent 90 degrees to the side and had turned a disgusting shade of blue, just like my marbles after I had to stop and go to the hospital. P.S. It ruins the mood.
The fourth story.
Here's a more colorful version of your wild story. So, it was Carl's last St. Patrick's Day, and my 3 friends and I, let's call them Adam, Carl, and Steve, decided to start the festivities early. We all arrived at Carl's place around 7 p.m., planning to head to a party near his house. But Adam, being the genius that he is, brought some alcohol, and we thought, why not? Let's pre-game and show up fashionably late. So, naturally, we dove straight into a drinking game, progressively getting more and more wasted. By the time we finished off all the booze, we finally decided to head out to the party. But, of course, Steve, the responsible one, reminded us we shouldn't drive drunk. So we decided to walk. After stumbling down the road for what felt like an eternity, about 30 minutes, Adam suddenly took a nosedive and passed out cold right in front of some random guy's house. At that moment, Steve, Carl, and I completely lost our shit, thinking Adam was dead. I mean, he was out cold. No signs of life. So, we did what any rational, sober people would do. We played rock, paper, scissors to figure out who would bury him. Steve and I tied, so we decided Carl would head back home to get a shovel. The rest of us, with all the wisdom of our drunk selves, tried to bury Adam in the guy's yard, with our bare hands. Yeah, that went well. When we realized we were making zero progress, we agreed it was time to take Adam back to Carl's and bury him in the morning. We figured we'd have a better shot at it when we weren't completely hammered. So, we tried to lift Adam, but we kept dropping him, which only made the situation worse. At this point, Steve gave me the brilliant idea to go grab my car and bring it to the scene so we could load Adam up before the cops showed up. I went 2 miles an hour because, honestly, I was terrified I'd miss the turn. By the time I got back, I found Steve, who was now crying over Adam like a scene from a soap opera. I told him to suck it up, and we got Adam into the trunk of my car. As soon as we laid him in there, a woman in a nightgown came storming out of the house across the street and screamed, "You better have a damn good explanation for all this." At first, I thought she was a ghost. Seriously, it was like something out of a horror movie. I turned to Steve to tell him to get in the car, but he had already vanished into the night. I panicked, slammed the trunk shut, then reopened it because I started worrying Adam couldn't breathe. But I didn't want him to fall out, so I closed it again. Then I opened it. I don't even know why. I just wanted to make sure he was okay. Eventually, I yelled, "Fuck the police!" and drove off at a thrilling speed of 5 miles per hour, trying not to lose my nerve. When I finally made it back to Carl's place, Carl was asleep on the lawn, and Steve was waiting for me, looking just as defeated as I felt. We dragged Adam out of the car and into Carl's basement, then tried to get some rest. That's when I proceeded to throw up on Carl's head. It was like the universe's way of telling me I had made a series of terrible decisions. The next morning, Adam was alive, but drenched in puke, sweat, a bit of blood, and for reasons unknown, dirt. Steve and I were nursing hangovers that could only be described as biblical, and Carl was in need of a brand new futon. TLDR. Spent my St. Patrick's Day getting way too drunk, thought my friend was dead, and had a wild series of events involving puke, dirt, and Jack Daniels. Don't drink and walk, folks.
The fifth story.
Here's a spiced up version of your story. So I went to Tahoe with some friends, and naturally we ended up at the blackjack tables, hoping to strike it rich or at least have some fun. We're at this table, and next to us there are two guys who are absolutely obliterated. Like slurring every other word, stumbling, but still somehow keeping it together enough to play. And let me tell you, they were hilarious. The kind of drunk where they're entertaining without trying to be. At one point, one of these guys gets a blackjack, a 21 baby, and stands up like he's on top of the world. He throws his hands in the air, screams at the top of his lungs, "Winner, winner, apple pie!" I'm sitting there, kinda stunned, and I look over at him and go, "What the fuck? I thought it was chicken dinner." The dude turns to me like I've just asked him the meaning of life, and he goes, "Nobody fucking likes chicken, and everybody loves apple pie." I couldn't argue with that logic. It stuck with me, and honestly, I've been saying, "Winner, winner, apple pie" ever since. TLDR. Drunk guy at the blackjack table made me realize that apple pie is superior to chicken dinner.
The sixth story.
So, this one night in high school, my friends and I were finishing up tearing down the school's theatre for renovations. It was somewhere around midnight, or maybe a little later, when we finally wrapped it up, and naturally we were starving. So, we decided to hit up IHOP for some pancakes. Picture this: 4 kids, 3 in high school and 1 in middle school, my friend's little brother, driving through mostly empty streets in the dead of night. We cruise down the road, passing a cop coming up on a red light that we need to turn left at. In a move that could only be described as bold, my friend, the driver, casually waved at the cop. We pull up to the light, and wouldn't you know it, the cop pulls up behind us. The light turns green, we take off, and guess who follows? The cop. And he's still behind us as we drive out of town, straight into the neighbouring township. Then it happens. The cop pulls right behind us, blocking us in, and lights up the sirens. At this point, we're just sitting there, confused as hell, out of his jurisdiction, and with absolutely no idea what we'd done wrong. My friend, trying to break the tension, says half-joking, "I bet they think we stole the car." Pause. Before I continue, let me hit you with some backstory. The car my friend was driving, he had bought it just the day before. Yeah, that car. We sit there for what feels like an eternity, though I was 18 and legitimately shitting my pants, especially because 2 months earlier I had been in a horrible accident where my face had been crushed in. I was wearing a dental mask to hide the damage and to stop anything from flying into my mouth. And to top it off, I was still high as a kite on painkillers. So just as I'm starting to wonder if this is the moment I'll finally lose my mind, 5 more police SUVs roll up, complete with the canine unit. My body goes cold. Shit just got real. I turn around to look out the back window, and all I see is flashing lights. The car is surrounded. It's like a scene from a damn crime movie. Then someone in the back seat goes, "Nerds need love too, don't move." Naturally, I ask, "Why the hell not?" Their reply, "There are 8 red dots floating on your forehead." Now I'm really panicking. A loudspeaker blares from behind us. "Right front passenger, please exit the vehicle with your hands in the air." Fuck, that's me. So, with my heart racing 1,000 miles a minute, I slowly back out of the car, hands up. Then they pull each of us out at gunpoint, slowly, methodically, and cuff us one by one. Next thing I know, we're shoved into separate cop cars for questioning. Turns out we were the ones in the wrong, sort of. See, my friend had purchased the car the day before, but here's the kicker. The car had been stolen off a dealership lot like 6 months prior. The dealership had bought it back at an auction, but never told the police they had it. And because the car was used, they didn't bother changing the license plates. So when the cop ran the plates, he saw it was marked as stolen. Cue the confusion and us getting pulled over. After digging through the glove compartment, the police find the purchase paperwork, and finally it clicks. But because they couldn't get a hold of the dealership to confirm they had the car legally, they had no choice but to tow it. They let us go, though, telling us they would be releasing us once they confirmed everything. By the time we were free, it was around 3 a.m., and we were hungry as hell. The worst part, we hadn't even been drinking, so we had to call my friend's mum to come pick us up while we were all still trying to process what had just happened. TLDR, my friend's car, which he just bought, turned out to be stolen, got surrounded by cops, questioned at gunpoint and nearly arrested, all because of a paperwork screw-up. And we weren't even drunk.
The seventh story.
I created an account for this. So my wife and I decided to get a Kerry Blue Terrier, thinking we were getting a nice, adorable little dog. For about 20 minutes, he was the sweet, lovable puppy we expected. Then he transformed into the spawn of Satan. At just 9 months old, he went full demon mode. This dog ate everything. I'm talking everything. He ate 2 pounds of pork roast, which led to a $3,000 vet bill due to some serious internal bleeding. He devoured a whole wheel of camembert, which was another round of destruction. And to top it all off, he launched himself through the back door like a wrecking ball, shattering the glass. That was another $2,500 to fix, followed by the front door. Another $2,000 because it was a century-old door that no one could find a replacement for. Fun times. But that's not even the worst part. The dog had a particular obsession with socks. New baby in the house? No problem. He'd suck the socks right off the baby's feet and eat them. We didn't even realize where the socks were going at first. It wasn't until we saw him do it and then found socks scattered in the backyard, half hidden in a mix of vomit and poop, that it clicked. Then came the time I couldn't find my wedding ring. It was February and I couldn't help but think the dog had swallowed it. After all, this was the same dog who had once eaten a 4-inch piece of silicone from a breast pump, which led to a mad dash to the vet. He threw it up just as we pulled into the parking lot. So I was convinced he had swallowed my ring. Now, I didn't want to let any of his poop leave the yard until winter passed, in case it was in there somewhere. I started hoarding dog shit, collecting shopping bags full of it throughout the season. Come spring, I was out there in the thawing yard, squatting down in latex gloves, squeezing cold, squishy dog poop like a madman, desperately searching for my ring. Every walk with the dog felt like a mission to stop and check for it in his turds. Even tried getting the dog groomers to help me check his poop, but they weren't having it. Then came the fateful day. It was mid-April, and I was out there on my haunches, going through a pile of dog poop like an insane person. Suddenly, wham! Dinglenuts, the dog, barreled into me, ramming me in the temple with his snout. I hit the ground hard, landing in the dog shit, and my head was spinning. My dog was groggy, but I was worse. I went inside and my wife was like, "You're not making any sense." We figured I might need medical attention, so off to the emergency room we went. Now let me tell you, explaining to the triage nurse that I had been rammed in the side of the head by my dog was not an easy conversation. She thought I was joking at first, then quickly called over another nurse to hear the crazy story. It was one of those days where the ER was probably filled with people like, "You won't believe the insane stories happening here today." After a few hours of ice packs and Tylenol, the doctor sent me home, still dazed and with a pounding headache. I got home, took off my fleece, reached into my pocket for my wallet, and what do I pull out? My damn wedding ring. Son of a bitch. I had been looking for that thing for weeks, squeezing dog shit and panicking, and it had been in my pocket this whole time. TLDR. I spent weeks trying to find my wedding ring in dog shit only to discover it in my pocket. Worst birthday ever. And just last week, he figured out how to unlock the front door. While we were out, got a call from the vet across town. Turns out he had escaped, happily wandering the streets. And let's not forget the time he grabbed a steak knife off the kitchen counter and charged my very pregnant wife with it. I mean, what the hell is wrong with this dog? So yeah, we've since installed multiple locks and security systems to keep him inside, because that little terror is relentless.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day. Bye.